Hello, this is Brian with the Bad Manners podcast. I'm reacting to a video featuring Lionel Shriver on Spiked about immigration being the issue of the century. This is a topic that I have a great deal of interest in, and I am curious as to what she has to say. As usual, all of my reactions are entirely raw.
Hello, I'm Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spiked. I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by the brilliant Lionel Shriver. Lionel will need no introduction except to say that you have a fantastic new book out called A Better Life. Lionel, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be back.
Lionel, your book is about immigration. I know this is something that you've been fascinated with for a long time, for decades, in fact. So I have to ask, why now? Why was now the time for Lionel Shriver to make this very pointed, very sharp intervention?
Because I got a good idea. It's obviously germane to the moment. It's not only the biggest issue in Europe and the United States, but I think it's the biggest issue of this century.
Yeah.
This is not going to go away.
It is certainly the largest issue in the United States since 1965.
There are going to be various iterations of it. So I could have written a book about immigration at almost any point during my 35-year fascination with it, and it would still have been germane.
Yeah.
But I was listening to the news in 2023 in New York, and I listened to Eric Adams, the then mayor, propose a program that would pay just regular resident New Yorkers to put migrants up in their spare bedrooms. And this is a program that never came to fruition.
As is usually the case with leftists, they tend to be very pro-immigration until they have to endure some consequence from that support. There's no shortage of meme videos where people are asked to sign petitions supporting illegal migrants. They sign them, they're presented with somebody that claims to be an illegal migrant and asked if they will house them. Naturally, no leftist agrees. They take this general approach that I've seen referred to as not in my backyard. So they'll endorse anything that the rest of the country will have to suffer, so long as it doesn't happen where they are. That's why there's this tendency to associate leftists with being these wealthy elite people that stay in mono-ethnic areas and never have to endure any of the complications that exist as a result of these ethnic groups having to try to occupy the same space.
But it did in my book. Because I just thought, put all these probably completely unvetted foreigners in people's houses. What could go wrong? And especially in my hands. And so what I did is I used the backdrop of what became known as the migrant crisis. During the Biden administration. And so that everything in the book, aside from the actual plot of my fictional characters, is accurate. It's set in history, so that when there's an incident like this was nationwide news, a group of 8 or 9 migrants who were being put up in a nearby shelter attacked a couple of New York policemen and beat them up, and that incident became a really emblematic of ingratitude.
Yeah.
Right. So
there is this tendency among people that live in the United States to put upon migrants the way they think they would feel if they're in their shoes, and the way they would feel if they're in their shoes is they would feel grateful they're in the United States, and they expect behavior that encompasses a grateful person. What they don't understand is, while they might feel that way, the motivations of the migrants that come here are not universal. They can come for any number of reasons, and they bring with them all the behaviors and biases that existed in the places they came from. So if that allows for the group beating of policemen, it's entirely on the table. Gratitude is not necessarily something at the forefront of their mind, and it is a mistake to assume that just because you would feel a certain way because you're allowed to do something means that other people will feel the same way. Something that Americans in particular need to get through their heads is their ways are not your ways. Human behavior comprises a wide duality, and any option is available to them, not just what you would do.
I'd use that. There are any number of little markers of what it was like to be in New York during this time. And New York was being inundated with literally hundreds of thousands of migrants. And it was partly their fault. I mean, Mayor Adams complained about the fact that it was destroying New York. But New York has this absurd policy called right to shelter.
Right.
So, I honestly don't understand why anybody pays rent there. Because you show up, they have.
Leftists always adopt policies that feel good, that appear to be looking out for the common man and improving their lives. But without exception, all it really does is weaken the moral character of the people it pertains to. It allows them to not have to improve their lives, to move themselves forward in a productive manner, because resources are being given to them without them actually doing anything themselves. And when you weaken the general moral character of a population, the number of people with that weakened character are going to grow as they witness people that are able to get by on little to no effort.
To give you a place to live.
Yeah.
I considered trying my luck.
One of the things that's really unique about the novel is because there are, of course, lots of novels, lots of films about immigration, but invariably they're about the migrant story.
Always.
And sometimes that's understandably quite a heroic thing. You can see why that can be
it's a good
interesting
story.
and entertaining.
That heroism is often overstated. If you're a migrant that moves to a more prosperous country and your goal is to get on the government dole of that country, then there is no real heroism involved. You've improved your life by having done nothing yourself other than moving locations. The real heroism of a migrant, in my estimation, is a person that not just moves to another location, but one that entirely abandons all of the biases, practice, and traditions of the place they came to adapt to this new group they wish to join. It is a kind of a rebirth of the person. That is a genuine heroism because it takes a degree of courage that the average person, frankly, is not capable of. Whereas the migrants, they move to a new place and they do it simply because that place functions as an economic zone that allows them to have a better life, but they still retain all of their previous practices and behaviors, is not really a form of heroism in the sense that we would recognize. I'm of the opinion that there is no heroism without a sacrifice. There is nothing sacrificial about moving to a place that allows you a better life when you didn't really abandon anything other than your location.
But you're focused on what does this mean for the natives, the host population.
Thankfully, people are starting to realize that the question should have always been asked, what is this immigration policy doing for the people already here? Because more often than not, there is no easily identified or even difficultly identified means by which these migrants are improving the lives of the host population. And any policy that does not improve the lives of the people the government is responsible to should be rejected out of hand.
Is that what you're getting at with a better life? You know, is there something in that is a bit of a provocation? Because we're assuming, again, that search for a better life is always about the migrants' better life.
The search for a better life, it is to be assumed that any person doing anything is doing it in the pursuit of a better life. It doesn't matter whether a person is migrating or simply existing in the country they were born in. You don't get to give special credit to a person doing something for a better life when that's what humans are to be assumed they are doing all the time.
And yeah, the title implicitly asks better life for whom, right? And according to most of the research, migrating quite reliably improves the life of the immigrant, but not necessarily for the host population.
And this is clearly something that has, you know, been around in politics for a long time. People have been complaining about mass migration.
This is one of the reasons that in all these countries that have been enduring mass migration, at no point have any of these populations voted for these extraordinarily lax immigration policies. Because they know that it does not benefit them in any substantive way. The absolute most you could accomplish with any of these host populations is the possibility of having very small numbers of extraordinarily skilled individuals that simply do things that the host population does not have the means to do themselves. To put it differently, this is like importing your geniuses, your Albert Einstein types. But that's not what any of these countries being migrated to en masse are employing. They're allowing people, very frequently, of low to no skill sets, which dilutes the labor pool and the earning power of the most vulnerable in society, which in turn causes those same individuals to lose hope, to lose a feeling of purpose, become despondent, and begin expressing negative behaviors.
People have been complaining about illegal immigration for a very long time, but it does seem to fall on deaf ears on many politicians. Perhaps not Donald Trump, but that's you know, maybe why the backlash.
Oh, it's one of the reasons he was elected.
Yeah, but it does seem.
Arguably, it is the reason. And do note, he is not delivering as well as most of his supporters want. Because the truth is, he is far more favorable to legal immigration, which the vast majority of Americans actually do have a problem with, as they continue to see foreigners take jobs that could actually go to Americans. In particular, visit his support for H-1B visas, something that is deeply unpopular with a great number of Americans.
Seems to be ignored by the cultural establishment. I mean, it's an issue that I think one of your characters describes as radioactive.
Yes.
Did that give you any trepidation in approaching the book?
Well, it should have. No, it didn't. Not enough. This book is coming in for a lot of flack.
Yeah.
It is actually a book that represents both sides of the immigration debate, but for the usual suspects that we're talking about, there's only one side.
Yeah.
So if you put the other side, like, this is too much too fast, and what about us? And why are we paying for welfare for these people? Why is New York putting all these foreigners up in hotels at...
That is truly the mind-boggling aspect of all of this. We're not even a case where we're taking in immigrants that have the demonstrated ability to look after their own affairs and not be dependent on the system. We openly take people now who are just on the system, will be on the system, and will be intergenerationally on the system. We already have a problem with Americans on intergenerational welfare. Of course, people that come here get on welfare, don't have to provide for themselves, don't have to develop their skill sets, don't even have to learn the language of the population because they can adapt into ethnic enclaves. There is no way they're going to be a net contributor to the civilization they've come to reside in.
The New York taxpayer's expense. You know, you're not supposed to say any of that stuff, much less in fiction. And you're not supposed to have any sympathy with the host population.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, they are comparatively wealthy and advantaged, or as we say now, privileged.
You're not allowed to side with the host population because the host population, whether they know it or not, still possesses a great deal of political power they can wield. As you continue to add more of these migrants, and especially the ones that are on government dole, and they acquire the right to participate in the democratic process, they are going to further entrench leftist interests. They are going to continue to vote themselves that expansive social safety net. They're going to vote for policies that allow more people like them to come here and enjoy the newly improved life they have. So in the end, it's a political game of power that greatly benefits the left, because those on the right are going to be your traditionalists, the ones that want to preserve a certain way of living that their ancestors had enjoyed. The left can't acquire that power without the equivalent of foreign mercenaries.
And so all the sympathy is supposed to go toward the migrant. And this book has sympathy with the people who have to accommodate so many strangers in their midst and pay for them.
And publishing is a kind of notoriously woke industry, woke, probably even worse than universities in some cases.
It's a contest.
Did you have any difficulties either having the book sold to a publisher or in the editing process? You know, what kind of issues might have come up in during that?
Well, to HarperCollins' credit, they did buy the book. And honestly, I wasn't sure they would.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've submitted a manuscript to them where I was genuinely anxious that it might be a bridge too far. And I might be reduced to self-publishing because none of the other big five would have touched this book.
Credit to her for writing something that clearly bucks the liberal orthodoxy, because they've captured numerous institutions such as publishing, and because it is useful to their development of this illusion that there's a common cultural consensus of what is appropriate. So if they can control literature, for example, then the only thing that ever comes out and that people will eventually consume are things that will shape their mind to believe that that liberal orthodoxy is the appropriate manner in which society should be structured. There are no alternative viewpoints.
So I give them a lot of credit for that. In the editing, I detected some cold feet, though, when it came down to particular passages. And I would often be told that, it's just too long, or it's, it's not really necessary, or you could get rid of this character. He doesn't really serve much purpose. And it just so happens that character says things that make my editor nervous. So that was interesting. I mean, on the one hand, they were going to buy this book, but on the other, when it came down to page by page, it was like, oh no, we can't publish this. And there is an element of I think, wanting to protect me from myself.
Yeah.
So it wasn't entirely just, heavy-handed censorship, but I figured in for a penny, in for a pound, right? I mean,
yeah.
The whole structure of the book, the plot of the book, in which a Brooklyn family takes in one migrant at first, but little by little it turns into a home invasion story, and let's put it this way, it doesn't work out well.
There's a wonderful kind of symbolism there. A society can reliably absorb small numbers of migrants and it may go well. But once the numbers rise to a certain level, you end up with a kind of civilizational conflict. Competition for power breaks out, and the host population may quickly find itself ruined in the process.
So that the whole thing is a risk. It is not presenting immigration as this just purely wonderful thing and economic rescue for the West. And,
that narrative needs to die. Importing large numbers of people with low cultural compatibility into your civilization is not an economic rescue. It's attempting to perform a sort of ship of Theseus where you're swapping out the existing population for a new one and hoping that the human capital is equivalent enough that they can buoy the civilization and allow it to continue carrying forward. In reality, that's not what happens at all. All you end up with is interracial conflict and each ethnic group pursuing its own respective priorities.
Oh, interesting restaurants. So there was no point in softening this and that passage or taking out a particular sentence, or, you know, one editor wanted me to make my protagonist like Honduran food more. No, I'm sorry, that's a lost cause. So, you know, from the beginning, I was going to invite criticism from the left. They were never going to like this book. The New York Times hated it. The Atlantic went on for thousands of words about how much this woman hated it.
How much do you want to bet that those individuals that expressed their hatred for her book are living in areas that are not very diverse?
So it really gets under their skin.
Yeah.
If they were smart, they'd ignore it. But they can't control themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can see why it gets under their skin, because it isn't just, you know, the migrant characters are not the only characters you might not have sympathy with. Some of the American characters or the, you know, the host populations, they have their own problems. And in particular, you know, there's the kind of, I guess you call her the woke liberal lady, whose naivety comes in for a good kicking. I mean, is this as much a criticism of our own societies as it is?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And not just on, it's not just a woke poke, right? It's not just a send up of the progressive mindset. It's a more serious criticism. The family in question, 3 grown children, the 2 older sisters have not had kids themselves. The youngest, the son, through whose eyes the whole story is viewed, also has no intention of having a family. And as the Honduran immigrant points out, you know, they're just going to disappear.
There is a very sad truth in that. I don't know if it's because of the increased secularism that has occurred in the United States. Really, it's occurred in all of Western civilization. But anti-natalist propaganda has made it to where a lot of people believe that it is in their best interest to pursue lives in which they do not procreate at all. They've managed to adopt an ideology that results in the cessation of their bloodline. And if you talk to some of them, they believe what they're doing is a good thing. Whether it's because they're self-loathing of their entire bloodline because they're white and hate what whites have done historically, or if it's simply because they're saving the planet or doing something good by wiping their own bloodline away. But there are certainly, and it's a leftist phenomenon more than any, they do not want to have children. They view it as a loss for their life, a net negative. It's them struggling and losing the ability to do what they want to do at any moment because that's the most important thing in their life. It's almost a repudiation of the understanding that humans are a social animal and the bond between parent and child is unparalleled in it to anything a human can experience. Which is probably why you have all those stereotypes of why, you know, older liberal women are going to be cat ladies that die alone. And there's a lot of truth in it, because they've eschewed the most intimate form of relationship known to mankind. And that is mother and child. Even father and child is, of course, of a similar nature. But they're ensuring that their people will decline in number. And they do it with the sense of both moral righteousness and the unbridled sense of hedonism and whatever pleasure they gain from that.
Yeah.
Right. Who's going to own their big house? There will be no Bonaventura family.
Interestingly, this is actually one of the reasons that I don't mind the prospective decline in population. A people can survive the natural ebb and flow associated with a population. Because, as she's pointing out, this house would become available. Well, guess what? Those people that do still exist are going to have access to these resources, so there will be a temporary bump in wealth for those that remain. And you can see an upward and downward cycle in which some generations are going to have more kids than others, and that's fine. But you cannot have that people continue to exist if you think that you're going to sustain the country by inviting in dissimilar people that do not share your priorities as a country at all. It's one of the reasons that, for example, Japan should really make it a point to allow in no migrants. They're headed for a strong contraction of their country's population, but people need to learn to understand a country's population declining is fine. It's natural. It closes some opportunities, but it opens others. The people can continue so long as they can enforce their borders and defend their beliefs. But we've been consistently lied to in the West and told that you need to bring in more people for the economy. The economy is not your God. You don't need to worship the economy. The economy can grow, the economy can contract. But you should want your bloodlines to continue on so those people can enjoy the fruits of what you developed and built, just as you enjoyed the fruits of what the people before you developed and built. That is far more important than some notion of the stock market's improvement being a net positive for society.
That's it. And that's that is a sincere criticism.
Yeah.
It's actually self-criticism, because I didn't have kids either. And I mean, at least my younger brother had 4 and therefore had mine for me. It's a kind of surrogacy.
I appreciate that she has self-awareness on this. If I were talking to her personally, I would ask her if she could do it differently if she would have children. Because it is a sad thing. Because now that possibility of her experiencing that kind of relationship is gone forever. And this is no attack on her or anything like that. It is just kind of sad. But if she has gained this awareness that comes with wisdom, and she understands a kind of course correction is needed, then that means the self-imposed loss still has some value, not just to her, but to everyone as a whole.
But he more than did his part, and I did not do mine. And when I was much younger, it was far more unusual for someone like me to opt to not have a family, but it's become altogether too usual.
Mm.
And this is germane.
With the extreme rise in white American women becoming very liberal, this is going to continue. It effectively guarantees that all of those women are either not going to breed at all, or they will have very few children who inherit her value system that makes it unlikely that they in turn will breed, and those bloodlines will very rapidly die out. And it's tragic because those bloodlines were, of course, our countrymen. Those were people that who your ancestors worked alongside and built this country with. And there's nothing to celebrate in the cessation of those bloodlines.
Partly because this is the argument on the open borders side is we're not reproducing ourselves. Our fertility rate continues to drop. If we're not going to diminish.
Increasing migration also discourages the native population from reproducing because it depresses the value of your labor. So you end up working more to be able to generate less relative wealth, which in turn makes reproducing harder because you have to constantly worry about reproducing's associated costs.
As a civilization and as a nation, we need to let in more people. I'd contend that argument doesn't quite hold water. Immigrants get old too. We have these family reunification policies, which often entail bringing in parents, which means we don't really improve our age structure. And furthermore, there are other values to defend other than economic growth. And that's where the left is especially uncomfortable.
Just the fact she pointed out that economic growth is not this all-important edifice is extraordinarily important. Americans need to come to terms with the reality that an economy should contract and expand. And that natural ebb and flow will have its attending suffering and prosperity, and that cycle is okay. It does not destroy your people. Your people will persist regardless of what the economy does. If you can make sure that people are operating in a system in which having children is not discouraged, there will be enough procreation that people will continue to exist. At times they will be less in number, at times they will be more in number, and that is fine. But they will remain culturally homogenous and therefore able to solve their own problems and move forward as a civilization. People have to stop listening to those that claim that migrants are necessary for the economy. They are not. They never were. And the pursuit of perpetual growth only exists because of the spending that the government has been doing over the last several decades. They're hoping, by increased numbers in the country producing growth, that they can outrun all the debt that's accumulated from them spending beyond their means. That's it.
Because there's nothing worth preserving about Western civilization, in their view.
That too. A big part of the reason that the left has no problem with pushing anti-natalist philosophies aimed specifically at white Americans is because they want that entire edifice destroyed and replaced with something else. Some of them don't mind if that results in them being part of what disappears because they'll do it with the feeling that they've accomplished something good. Some of them do it because they think they're going to be the ones sitting on top of the newly formed power hierarchies. But the bottom line is, anybody pushing anti-natalist propaganda on anybody that believes in and supports Western civilization is an enemy of yours and should be understood and treated as such.
And I noticed that also that Nico, the character who's the most openly critical of the family's decision to open up their home to his migrants, you know, he has his own problems. He, as you say, he's childless, doesn't even seem interested in looking for
it's
love.
Worse than that. I mean, he's only 26, so you can reason that maybe he'll come around in the end on the kids, though there's no sign of that in the book. But he got a degree in engineering, and then just went home and did nothing for 4 years. And by the way, has no plans on doing anything. Celebrates doing nothing. He is relishing what he calls his hovercraft repose, and finds having embraced a life with absolutely no ambition greatly restful.
That character sounds like they could be one of many men in this country who've checked out of the system. They don't see value in participating in it. They don't believe the system is for them. There is no grand purpose to life that they are striving to fulfill. And when a man does not have a sense of purpose, more often than not, he is going to engage in behaviors that are counterproductive. At worst, it can lead to self-destruction. At best, it just produces a person in a sort of stagnant state. They never get better. They do get worse with age, but nothing ever meaningfully changes.
Right. So he's hardly a paragon of get up and go.
Yeah.
And the story is deliberately rigged against him, right? Because he's objecting to the dependency of all these foreigners coming in and expecting to be put up and get 3 meals a day, and that's exactly what he gets, right?
The existence of the government dole is a moral hazard. So long as it exists, people understand that their survival is more or less ensured. That vital struggle for survival that gives an important meaning to life, in the absence of it, people will just kind of languish. It is interesting, she has a character that is exactly that sort of languishing man that is indolent and reliant on the dole, complaining about another group doing the same thing. There is an irony in it, but it's a kind of sad, tragic irony.
He's dependent on his mother. He criticizes them for using New York taxpayers. Well, he's not a New York taxpayer. He's dependent on a New York taxpayer, his mother, right? So,
okay, so he's not on the government dole, but he is on his parents' dole. I guess that's relatively better than being on the government dole, but it still does result in this sort of spiritual and physical stagnation that so many young men have in this country. And I don't even entirely blame the young men in this country for having that complete stagnation in their life, because they're not residing within a system that rewards them, well, sufficiently rewards them for trying to improve their life. Nobody's working to throw resources at young white men. And there's all kinds of barriers to being entrepreneurial in the form of regulations. Corporations have captured major markets, so you have to seek to be employed at these corporations. Many corporations have individuals who employ hiring practices that strongly show an in-group preference. And in the end, you end up with this kind of despondence in these young men asking, what's the point? I can work really hard but not really improve my station. Because I can't improve my station, I'm probably not as desirable to women as I would be if I were wealthy. So you end up with a generation of young men that they check out. And even though it's sad, it's understandable.
and this is, on the authorial front, this is deliberate. It is a complication. It is an undermining, and it is also, it's representative of a certain proportion of the last couple of generations of young people. I am sympathetic with them. I'm sympathetic with the high house price problem. Yeah. There are now young people are facing, AI and wondering whether what they train for is even going to give them a job in a couple of years. AI is already eating into entry-level positions.
A society that does not structure itself in such a way, the young people coming into adulthood can insert themselves into jobs and acquire experience on those jobs, and over time eventually become experts in their field, is a civilization that cannot help but eventually collapse. And you especially see this with how corporations are structured now, where they're always claiming that they need foreign labor. And it might be true. They might need foreign labor now. But that's because they've ensured that Americans are not getting the opportunity to acquire this experience and become experts in their field. The corporations are expecting immediate reward for their needs. When you take in a foreigner to do a job that, yes, the young American might have growing pains, they might not be the best that the corporation needs at that time, but civilization as a whole will prosper because that American will get better. And not only will they improve, it avoids the future where instead of that person improving their life, participating in the system, that person becomes despondent, checks out of the system, and may even seek their own self-destruction. You absolutely need to prioritize opportunities for your own citizens. You cannot, under any circumstances, create a system where the supposed need of big business outsources the prosperity of the people of your country. And that is exactly what we have now with H-1B visas. The entire practice should be banned.
And should clarify also that while I was writing the book, I found myself very sympathetic with the protagonist Nico, more so than I would have expected to be.
Yeah.
And not only because of the very real difficulties of making a go of your life in your 20s, even if you are ambitious, but even being sympathetic with his not wanting to have anything to do with it. Like, I didn't ask to be here, and I see nothing about being an adult that especially appeals to me. Right?
Yeah.
So, and there's one exchange that he has with an old friend of his and they haven't seen each other for years. And the friend has gone on and has become quite prosperous, has a serious career going, is planning on getting married, expects to have children. This is, the good young person. and his friend asks, well, why on earth have you stalled out? And Nico says, because I can.
Yeah. That's something that's been enabled across the West.
That's the moral hazard I referenced. Humans are naturally inclined to seek the path of least resistance because there is a tendency towards people wanting to be in a state of homeostasis, where everything is okay and you don't really need to do anything to preserve that state. If you allow a person to acquire what they need without actually doing anything, more often than not, people are actually going to take that option. It's one of the reasons that you see intergenerational use of welfare. It is people simply following the path of least resistance. The reason I call it a moral hazard is, if they didn't have that, they would have to develop themselves into a better, more productive person. And their entire moral character would begin to shape around productivity rather than simply existing. It results in a superior human being. It's one of the reasons that while there might be a genuine purpose in social safety nets, you should never arrange a system in which a person can exist without being productive forever.
And indulged.
It has been indulged.
It would be remiss of me not to ask you about language, if we're talking about novels and literature, because the way that we talk about immigration has changed substantially. And there's even an exchange in the novel about the shortening of the word from immigrant to migrant. But there is also these proliferation of terms from undocumented to or illegal migrants, or we never quite know what words to use. What do you make about the battle over?
That battle over language is because the left wants to obscure the reality. If they can cause enough confusion over terms in your mind that it obscures what is actually going on, then you're less likely to act decisively or have a moral clarity to your approach to the situation.
Over language, over this issue.
It's the same old with the left. It's this constant cleansing. The left especially dislikes illegal. That's because they are illegal. And this pat aphorism they keep trotting out, no human is illegal. Yes, they are. It's just like, sorry.
It's the kind of statement that is meant to cause confusion in your mind, because saying no human is illegal or no person is illegal, well, is true. People's existence is not illegal, but they cause you to conflate that statement, which is true, with the reality that human actions are illegal or can be illegal. And yes, a person coming here without proper documentation is illegal. So they're trying to, once again, cause confusion in your own mind that would compel you to act less decisively in undermining what it is they want from you.
You're not supposed to be here. Your presence is illegal. So, there've been these relaunderings, the undocumented, which to me kind of similar to that turning homeless to unhoused. It puts the responsibility on another party. It's like someone didn't give them documents. The government is remiss. A bureaucracy.
Well, it's perfectly within the keeping of how the left generally believes society functions. They believe that the system is oppressing everybody, and therefore any misfortune suffered by that person is the fault of the system. It's actually a vernacular that's entirely appropriate to their worldview.
Has failed to produce the documentation that these people need. And then there's irregular migrant.
Yeah.
Right? Like, as I point out, like cheap rejects of towels. And I think that the left is all this cleansing. It is in the interest of disguising the difference between the citizen and the immigrant, and especially the illegal immigrant, because the left fundamentally believes in open borders, and won't admit it, but
they won't admit it because it may well see an uprising from the population that still exists. Make no mistake, if there was severely large enough numbers of these migrants, they could say it openly because there wouldn't be enough of a effective power to stand in opposition to what it is they're doing. The left is just biding their time. Eventually, they will become clearly open borders because there will no longer be an effective resistance from the traditional Americans that are not acceptable of such a state.
If you follow all their policies, they lead to open borders. Right now, the whole, defund ICE or end ICE, the opposition to any deportation whatsoever, indicates that at the end of the day, you really just don't believe we have the right to keep anybody out.
You can see this in how much the left attempted to defend that MS-13 gang member from getting deported.
To keep anybody out or to kick anybody out. They don't believe in deporting anybody. That's an open border policy.
And there's another phrase I wanted to ask you about that's quite germane to the ICE discussion in America. A sanctuary city. You wrote a column on this.
Yes.
Recently. It's a kind of fantastic phrase that conveys a kind of real holiness and sanctimony.
Yes, it has religious connotations.
Yeah.
It conveys a sense of self-righteousness.
Signaling moral virtue is very much something the left loves to do, even though their entire worldview lacks any standardized understanding of morality whatsoever.
And doing God's work, right? And it's been disastrous on a number of levels, but immediately in relation to these ICE raids, ICE is especially interested in going after criminal aliens. And the easiest way to get their mitts on criminal aliens is just to have local authorities who have already arrested or sometimes even tried and imprisoned illegal immigrants for a variety of crimes. And ICE is not that particular about it has to be violent crimes. The Democrats keep talking about exclusively violent crimes, but frankly, I would like to get rid of the fraudsters and the people smugglers and people who might break into my house. Let's get rid of them too. But sanctuary cities will not turn over criminals to ICE custody so that they can be deported. I don't think that's in the interest of their local population. I mean, it means that you're releasing criminals into the midst of your citizenry.
Given the left seeks the destruction of anybody traditionally American, it tracks.
so that they can commit more crimes. Oh, great. Thanks a lot. But furthermore, it means that ICE has to go looking for them in the general population rather than just having them handed over. And that means they're more likely to encounter along the way other illegal aliens who maybe haven't committed any crime, but as long as they're discovered to have no permission to be in the country, then they get arrested too. This is exactly what the left doesn't want. So it completely backfires.
And do you see a difference between the debates in the US and in Europe? I mean, of course, people fundamentally want the same thing. The majority of the population wants the same thing, which is secure, controlled borders. But I do feel like perhaps the progressive left in America is maybe more vocal, whereas in Europe it seems to be the judiciary a lot of the time that is deciding that migrants must have the right to stay for some various convoluted reason, even including criminal migrants.
Oh, the Democrats are using the judiciary also.
Thankfully, she pointed that out. No, there's been no shortage of leftist judges that have made it extraordinarily difficult to deport some people that have no case for being here. And this is the danger of having a judiciary that has ideologues in positions of authority.
You know, I'm afraid in the U.S. as well, the judiciary is politicized.
Yeah.
And so you deliberately take a suit to a judge you know was appointed by a Democrat and has a history of permissive decisions. So it's the same problem. The biggest difference between the U.S. and UK, hitherto anyway, has been the Muslim issue.
Yeah.
So
make no mistake, the Muslim issue is rapidly increasing in the United States too, which is wild because all of these countries, whether here or in Europe, Islam does not get along with any culture that's not already Islamic. They always seek the same thing, eventual domination and control over wherever they go to. If they are peaceful, it's only until they have the numbers to overthrow the existing government that they've migrated to.
the U.S. Has comparatively few Muslim immigrants, and therefore it really doesn't feature substantially in the public conversation about the issue. I think that's going to change because the numbers are starting to go up. I was really astonished to discover that there are now 800,000 Muslims in New York City out of a population of 8.5 million. And it was well below 100,000 in the year 2000.
The fact that the United States has immigration policies that allow in a people whose belief system is anathema to all of American jurisprudence and traditions is mind-boggling. Muslims are a cancer to any society that is not already Islamic. There are no exceptions to this rule. And whenever you see a leftist point out that, oh, well, I know a peaceful Muslim, if they grow in number and they start to be able to exercise violence effectively against the existing institutions, those so-called moderate Muslims are not coming to the defense of the native people of that country. They will go along with the ones that subvert the institutions and engage in violence, because that's where their loyalty lies. That is where their religion leads and what they desire. So even if it's very tiny numbers of them, it can only be survived in the same way that humans themselves can absorb small amounts of poison. It does not benefit the body, just as Muslims do not benefit any Western civilization. They are a negative. They are a danger, and it's not anything that anybody should be allowing.
So it has soared. And it is, and the size of that population is now rivaling the size of the Jewish population. And the Jewish population of New York City is the largest concentration of Jews outside of Israel.
Yeah.
So, and along with that population is coming escalating anti-Semitism. This big surprise, and I think that's going to be a big issue in New York going forward.
And you say
it's an issue in New York. It's already an issue in Michigan. It's an issue now in Texas. It's a spreading issue anywhere. American immigration policy is obviously far too dismissive or permissive when you are allowing incompatible ideologies and belief systems to begin increasing in number in your country. And some bonehead leftists will clearly claim that it's an issue of freedom of religion. The founders of this country did not write the First Amendment with Islam in their minds at all. And this is clear because when they came across the Barbary pirates, you had the founders and early leaders of this country suddenly getting Qurans and studying up on it. And what they rapidly realized is Islam is entirely incompatible with anything American. If you are an American and appreciates this country's history, then when you see that America's first contact with Islam was them trying to make slaves of Americans, then you should immediately know it's not a belief system that belongs anywhere near us. It should be aggressively opposed if they do try to enter the country. So yes, this is an area that needs addressing, and anybody that is tolerant of it is either somebody that's hoping to use Muslims to bolster leftist causes, which is ironic because if the Muslims rose to power, they would immediately throw the leftists over. So they're not really allies in the true sense of the term. Or they're people that just want the destruction of America for whatever reason. There is not a good reason to have them here.
I think quite astutely that this issue is going to run and run, I think, almost regardless of who is in office.
They must all go. No exceptions.
Of what the public asked for and what policies are implemented. The immigration debate feels like it's here to stay for a long time, do you think?
Yes, it's become the ultimate political litmus test as to which side you're on. And I think that's why this book is so divisive. It is, in order to be on the left, even more than being pro-trans, you have to support immigrant rights.
Political power is heavily derived from numbers. Immigrants are the numbers for the Democrats. So they want them here in as much as they can achieve that end.
And I think the end point of that position is that you let everyone in and that you give citizenship to everybody. And it's not practical. So
it's not practical if you want a healthy civilization. It is absolutely practical if you want to destroy that civilization and replace it with something else.
But this. I don't see an end to the argument. I could tell you any number of things that I would like to see change in immigration policy, but at the same time, I just don't think it's going to happen. Right? I'd like to see us be much choosier about who we let in. More.
Immigration should be rare. Only for those areas which truly cannot be addressed by American. We're looking at your kind of Albert Einstein types. And that person, not just because of their economic capabilities, they must also be of good moral character and willing to abandon the person they previously were to entirely adapt themselves to being an American citizen and American only. That's the only way you can have an immigration policy that benefits the entire country.
Skills based. There are a lot of, like in the UK, there's a lot of lip service paid to that, but it doesn't work out, right? I'd like to see an end of family reunification, which is one of the reasons that that migrants are not having the kind of economically improving effect that the left keeps telling us.
It's not an issue of just their effect on economics. The unification should not happen because it allows them to more easily form ethnic enclaves and discourages their assimilation to the whole. It allows them to surround themselves with people whose biases, customs, behaviors, traditions, and behavioral patterns are adapted to them already. It promotes the balkanization of the host country they join.
That they have. After all, if mass migration were the answer to one's economic woes, considering the numbers for the last 25 years post-Blair, the UK should be thriving.
Yeah.
It ain't.
I would also point out that for the United States, we have not gotten better. So if it hasn't improved since the Hart-Celler Act, because real wages are down, the purchasing power of the dollar is down, education system performance is down, there is almost no metric by which American lives have improved since the significant change in immigration policy that the Hart-Celler Act kicked off in '65. There is no evidence at all that indicates that mass migration has been a net benefit to any of these countries. The only entities that may have benefited from these approaches are major businesses, in that it benefited their bottom line in the short term. But there has certainly been no long-term benefits that can be identified for the host population.
And is there anything that you'd like to say to some of your critics, whether that's the more simple-minded ones or the more sophisticated ones? Have you got? Is there anything any way you'd like to answer the charge that you're being overly simplistic, or even, heaven forbid, racist or far right?
You can't talk people into liking your book. It's just like it's a complete lost cause, and I just don't think that the people on the far left are going to like this book. There's no way. But in the U.S., for example, and I don't think it's any different over here, the people who classify themselves as very liberal is 6% of the population. So I'm pitching this book to the 94%. And, it's also a fun book.
Brilliantly funny.
It does have a plot, unlike most literary novels. I would contest the notion that it is a satire. It is not a satire. It's not exaggerated. Everything is life-size. And this book, the plot of this book is totally plausible. It could easily have happened, especially if Mayor Adams had gone ahead with his somewhat wrong-headed program.
It's certainly plausible if any of the number of leftists that claim they want increased immigration would actually live up to their principles and take in migrants.
So, if you're far left, you're for open borders, you can't bear to read passages that conflict with that viewpoint, go buy another book.
I think our viewers and listeners are going to love this book. It's called A Better Life by Lionel Shriver, and it's out now. Lionel, thank you so much for...
So I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. However, it was a quality video. It does sound like her book is certainly worth reading. I was not aware of its existence prior to watching this video, so it is something I think I will be checking out. I do appreciate the introspection she showed regarding her own life, because there's a strong likelihood that that correlates into the writing having a kind of gravity that it wouldn't otherwise possess. But yeah, immigration is by far the leading issue for Western civilization at this point. We know that it has not improved any of the countries that have absorbed these extreme numbers of foreigners. And we should have known this, because our ancestors absolutely would have known this. Thomas Jefferson wrote about how people bring the biases and prejudices of those countries that they came from. People are not blank slates. They become a reflection of the culture they grew up in. And importing large numbers of people who clearly have beliefs about life and practices that are different from your own and expecting them to somehow integrate into your society seamlessly is fallacious at best. It flies in the face of human nature. Human nature aptly demonstrates that you just end up with opposing groups that will come into conflict. It's one of the reasons that when people referred to the United States as a melting pot, it already shows a misunderstanding of the way immigration should function. It shouldn't be people coming together to produce this relatively new thing. It should be a case of the one that joins adopts all the characteristics of what was already there. Similarly, nowadays you see the term, America is not a melting pot, it's a salad. You end up with a case where the tomato wants different things from the lettuce, and it might be trying to kill the croutons. So a salad is even worse than a melting pot because there's no assimilation, and that salad is going to inevitably balkanize. The melting pot will never be able to get anything done that satisfies all parties because now everything is in service to some amorphous whole that doesn't actually have a unified problem to solve. The only model that can work, that will result in a civilization that moves forward and improves, is one that services a singular people. Now, that people might be composed of various ethnic groups, but they will be culturally homogenous. In some ways, this is reflected by when Teddy Roosevelt talked about how there is no room for a hyphenated American. And I am absolutely in agreement with that. There should be no hyphenated American. The only identity that should be at the front of any person in this country's mind is the American identity, because they have abandoned all else. If that happens, then we will have achieved what is represented on American currency. I will say it wrong, but it's like e pluribus unum, of many people one. That can work. Right now, we're of many people, many. That is dysfunctional, and we see that in how our governmental structures function now. We have a Congress that can get nothing done. We have an executive branch that is routinely stonewalled by the judiciary. This cannot continue forever, because when governments cease to be able to serve their populations and to help them solve the problems that are important to them, revolution and strife naturally follow. Other than that, though, Spike's video with her is fantastic. If you like just what they said, please go over to them. Like, comment, subscribe to them. If you liked anything I had to say, any of the commentary I provided, like, comment, subscribe. You guys have a great night.